Hello and welcome back to another video, and today I'm going to be talking about, as a UK primary school teacher, what I think about all the teacher strikes going on, about the offers from the government, about why the strikes are happening, just my general point of view on it all, because it's been a while since I've done a teaching video on this channel, and I'm trying to balance it out between some stuff that I quite enjoy doing, things like Football Manager, some games, that kind of stuff, and also then some cooking bits that we've been doing on here, and also some teaching stuff. And so today is a teaching video. And yeah, I just want to talk about the strikes at the minute, because there's been loads of stuff on about the strikes so far this year, and they've just announced some more strikes that are going to be happening. We can talk about those in a little bit as well. And so yeah, I just wanted to go through and say what I really thought about the matter. So this year so far, there's already been a whole bunch of different strike days. There's been 3 national strike days where teachers across the entire country have struck. What's the past tense of strike day? Don't know. Anyway, where teachers across the country have all gone on strike at the same time. And there's also been a day for each kind of sector. So Yorkshire had a day and the South East had a day, that kind of thing. And where teachers have gone on strike. And for me, in my teaching career, this is absolutely unheard of. I know there's been strikes previously, in previous years, and I think some of them were when I was at school. But as a teacher myself, I've never ever had to do anything like this. And as I've said in previous videos, I always kept it kind of quiet what I wanted to do before I actually went on strike, and that's because I wanted to make sure these videos were about you guys making your own mind up. And now the strikes have actually happened, then yeah, I did go on strike, and on those days I went on strike because I thought it was the best thing to do in terms of the children's education, in terms of the education system as a whole. And I do think I'm still thinking about whether or not we're going to do it, because there's a whole bunch of reasons about the next few strikes. The NEU have announced, I think it is 5 more days. I'm just going to go and check that. So yeah, there's going to be 5 more strike days coming up. They've announced 2, I think it's the 27th of April and the 2nd of May. And they've also going to say there's going to be 3 more strike days after that in kind of late June, early July, near the end of the school year. And I'm now sat here thinking about whether or not I'm going to take part in those strike days. And to be perfectly honest, I still haven't made my mind up. I think there's various reasons why I may or may not take part in some of them. I know from speaking to a few Year 6 teachers, such as my wife, she's not sure about them because of things like it's coming up to SATs for some of them just before SATs week, and that's a really important time to be in school with the children, getting them ready for that in Year 6. But then also I'm kind of thinking like, well, this is what the government wants. The government is saying these, either giving these offers that maybe aren't what is expected, or just hoping that the teachers are just going to fizzle out and go away and go back to work and forget about it all. And I don't want to be one of those teachers that does that. I don't want the government to win on this. And I will explain more about that as well in the future videos and in a few minutes time in this video. But yeah, I'm not sure what I'm going to do, because it's a big financial hit. At the minute we're raising our child, he's just turned 1.5, and he goes to nursery 5 days a week because my wife and I are both teachers, and we don't really have a lot of people around us that can look after him during the day. So we've both used up a lot of our leave, like all of our paid leave we've had when he's like had a day off school ill, that kind of thing. We've used up all of that now. So whenever he has a day off ill, that's a day that either my wife or I has to take as unpaid leave, just because there is no more time left in our policies, our schools. And that's nothing on our schools. They have to follow the policy. It's just what you have to do. But it's also something we have to think about, and we have to kind of factor in when we're looking at our monthly budget and saying, right, we've got this much money here, this much money for bills there. We have to factor in that if he has a day off nursery, then that's one of us losing. I think it's about £50 or £60 a day we get, kind of when you break it down like that. And that can add up to a lot of money. He had chickenpox a while ago where he was off from Tuesday to Friday. That's almost £200, which is a lot of money to lose in 1 month. And so thinking about that on top of another 5 days of strikes, is it going to be financially viable for us to do that? Well, we're going to have to look at that and make that decision ourselves, because I also am very passionate about doing it for the right reasons. And even if it will mean we struggle a little bit financially, if we can do it, then is it the right thing to do for the education system as a whole? And in most cases, I think that will be a yes, it is. So there's a lot of thought coming up. Now, the reason that these strikes have been called is because the government did introduce a pay offer. So they offered teachers a 4.5% pay rise and a £1,000 kind of bonus payment for this year. And that was rejected by the NEU. They sent out a vote to NEU members. I got one as a member of the NEU, so did my wife. And all the NEU members voted. And I think of the people who voted, it was 98%, I think, voted no and rejected the deal. And that was mainly, from what I could see, because it was nowhere near what was asked for. It might be the start of a negotiation potentially, though not from what the government have said. But there was a few different things that the government had said in the deal that just wasn't really satisfactory. Now, first of all, Part of that deal was not funded. Well, really, it was an unfunded deal. So the money they're giving to schools, the government expected that to be able to cover the amount that they were going to pay teachers at 3.5%. The government said they were going to cover an extra 0.5%, and the school's budget would have to cover the other extra 0.5%, which might sound like an only tiny proportion, but with so many school budgets already absolutely on their knees and really, really struggling to sort any new stuff out, then that can be a really big issue for schools to have to find this. I've seen lots and lots of head teachers talking about maybe looking at redundancies, having to say, look, we can't employ people. There's people on short-term contracts that aren't sure about whether they're going to get a new contract or not because schools aren't sure what funding they're going to get for these pay rises. So these pay rises were roundly rejected, mainly for, I think, the funding issue, and also in a strange way the government gave them with conditions. So the government gave this offer out, but said to the unions, if the union even thinks about telling its members not to vote for the offer, then the offer would be withdrawn and it wouldn't be an offer anyway. So straight away, that kind of, it feels weird. It feels wrong. I've never heard of a negotiation done that way. Said, here's an offer, but if you don't like it, and even if your members vote for it, if you say you don't like it, then we're not going to give it to you anyway. Well, of course you wouldn't, because the union might have said they don't like it. And as it is, the NEU did offer that out to members and said they advise you to reject it. So straight away, in my head, that means the offer was withdrawn anyway, and it wasn't even a real offer in the first place, because by the time we looked at the offer and by the time the union had shown us it, they'd already said to reject it, and so, well, the government had withdrawn it, and that was that. So the government has again said that means they will not go negotiate any further. Now, this is what the government said last time, and they said they weren't negotiating, and then they've ended up negotiating, so who knows whether they will or not in the future. I really don't know. But I think there's a lot bigger things at stake at the minute compared to what most people think it is just about. So when you read the newspapers, lots and lots of them, people online talk about teachers just want more pay, they want extra money, they've got loads of holidays, why do they deserve it, blah, blah, blah. And I think actually at the minute, teachers are striking for a lot of other reasons other than just pay. Now, don't get me wrong, a pay increase would be lovely and I'd appreciate it, and I would never say no to an increase in my wage because I feel I deserve an increase in my wage. And so part of it is about an increase in teachers' pay and about valuing the profession more, which would therefore increase the rate of retention in teachers, increase the number of teachers qualifying. They're missing their recruitment targets regularly at the government, so an increase in salary would be brilliant for that. However, there's also various other things that are an issue. For instance, at the minute with Ofsted, the whole Ofsted system is pretty much broken. It does not work. It doesn't fit the way it should do, and a lot of that, for me, is based around the lack of input after an Ofsted inspection. So I do think that there has to be some kind of system in place for schools to be inspected and to make sure they're doing what they say they should be doing. That absolutely should be true. But there's two big issues for me with Ofsted. First one, once you've had your report, once you've had your Ofsted letter, and you've been told it's either good, requires improvement, inadequate, whatever it might be, outstanding, there's no support after that. From what I've seen, you get that and you get told, right, okay, let's say you get requires improvement. You get told you're in an RI school, requires improvement. You've got a year to sort it out. We'll see you next year. And I've never heard personally of any kind of advice that's given on what to do. You know, you get a report and you say this wasn't good enough, this wasn't good enough, this wasn't good enough. But what do you then do to fix it? What do Ofsted then do to train people, to help people, to coach people on how to make things better? I personally don't know what the answer is to that. And I've looked online, I've tried to find stuff, and I've not found an answer other than other people saying the same thing. So if you could comment down below what the answer is to that, what do Ofsted do when an RI school requires improvement grade to help them improve, then do let me know, because I'd love to know what they do. But I don't know. So that's one big issue with the system, is that once you get a label, there's nothing that is there in place to help you get out of that label. You have to do it all yourself. And secondly, my second big issue with Ofsted is that from what I can see, there's no set framework on what something good should look like, what a good school should be. There's so much difference. What Ofsted inspector you get at your school makes such a massive difference to your inspection. There's some absolutely horror stories out there about Ofsted, and there's some inspectors that come in and look for things wrong. They have an agenda in their head before they even get there. And there's also some fantastic stories, like when we had Ofsted, we got a good grade in our Ofsted report that we had last year, and it was a great experience. There was no problem. The guy was a really good Ofsted inspector. He came in, he was the executive head of some schools anyway that had just had Ofsted, so he knew what it was like as well to have them come in. And he was lovely. He came around, he talked to people, he made us feel at ease, and it was a really good inspection, and we got a good score, which I expected us to get. We've worked really hard to get that grade. But yeah, that was brilliant. But then how can there be such a difference in these inspections? How can some schools have such an awful time? And I don't think it is just schools exaggerating it. I think it is true that some Ofsted inspectors, if they are particularly passionate about music, will hone in on the music side. Whereas other Ofsted inspectors, if they're particularly passionate about maths, will really dig deep in the maths curriculum. And to me, that isn't fair. Your Ofsted inspection shouldn't matter what inspector you get. If you went and sat a GCSE paper, if the invigilator was the one that decided whether or not then your GCSE paper was hard or whether it was easy, or if there was a question on calculus or trigonometry or whatever it might be, then that wouldn't be fair on all the people sitting GCSEs across the country if they're all different papers. So why is the Ofsted framework supposedly there to keep everything level playing field, but then the inspectors take it upon themselves to change that and look into certain things the way they want to look at them? It really baffles me. And again, if you know the answer to that, please put it in the comments down below, but I simply do not know. So they're my two of the biggest things. And other than that, the thing with Ofsted that I don't know how this one could be fixed, but so much about stuff that goes on in school is to do with Ofsted rather than to do with the children. The amount of time teachers put in to do something, not because it will help the children, not because it will benefit them, not because it will do anything amazing, but because Ofsted are going to look for it. And that's the only reason. And I've done it before. There's loads of work I did in the build up to Ofsted last year where I sat down and I did the work and I knew I was doing it, and I knew the reason I was doing it was because Ofsted wanted to see it. And I didn't use it in class. I didn't show it to any children. I didn't do anything with it other than file it away, store it, just in case Ofsted ask. And that to me is just a massive waste of time. And again, it's one of the things of being a teacher. You have to get some stuff like that. And there's always stuff like that, I'm sure, in all different careers. But the whole point of being a teacher is you're there to teach children, to do the best for them. And when you're doing stuff that isn't the best for them, then why are you doing it? What's the point? And my school has been fantastic over the last kind of 2-3 years at getting rid of loads of that stuff. And we used to do loads of things that weren't really for the benefit of the children. And now we do very, very little stuff like that. But when Ofsted come around, you just have to. And again, you shouldn't. You shouldn't have to. You should do everything the way you normally do. But when Ofsted are coming in and you've got 2 days to impress them to show that you can do stuff for the next 5 years, well, you're going to make sure those 2 days are what they want to see. And it doesn't matter if it's not what you normally do with the children, because it's what Ofsted want. And I disagree with that approach. I don't know a way around that approach. I don't know what will make that better. And that's the one where, again, I'm hoping you guys might have some answers for me. I think I've got some ideas for the other two, like I said earlier. But for that, I'm not really sure what Ofsted could do differently to change that. Because other than maybe coming to schools more regularly, get a snapshot over a whole year rather than 2 days for 5 years, I don't know. You'll have to let me know what you think. So yeah, there's the big issues with teaching at the minute. I think they're the big issues with Ofsted. I think you can talk about teacher pay, hitting recruitment or failing to hit recruitment targets, about teacher retention, teachers leaving the profession. The massive case of just teacher burnout, where teachers work too hard and do too much when they sometimes need to remember that it's a job and it should be viewed as a job rather than a lifestyle kind of thing. But I'd love to know what you guys think about all of this. And as always, there'll be more videos like this coming out where I kind of talk about some of the issues and hopefully try and fix some of the issues around teaching and talk about them a little bit more openly than they always are talked about. As always, there'll be some other stuff on the channel, just things that I enjoy doing, some videos, some games, some cooking, I've got Lego up there that I put on here a while ago. It's just stuff that keeps me interested, and I like a nice hobby of making these videos. So let me know of anything you guys want to see, any questions you might have about teaching as a whole, and I'll try and get them answered for you. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you very soon.